Good morning, everyone. This is Julie McDonald with Microcom Technologies, and I'd like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar with Tycon Systems. Today's host is Seth Allen, and he is their Director of Sales. Thank you so much. And he'll be presenting with us today. If everyone is ready to go, and please submit your questions in the question box, and Seth will be able to answer them at the end of today's presentation. Seth, thank you so much for being with us. We greatly appreciate your time today. I am finished for now. Please go ahead and take it on over.
Sounds good. Thanks, Julie, and thanks for having me. Excited to be here today. We're going to talk. So, Tycon Systems has three major brands that we offer, and today we're going to talk about Tycon Power. If you couldn't tell by the little bubbles on the screen. So today we're focusing on power. We're going to talk a little bit about PoE and what that means. So here's a great little diagram. Might want to take a picture or a screenshot. This is great, a great resource for later. But it kind of explains the different types of PoE. So PoE, or Power over Ethernet, is basically combining power and data on one Ethernet Cat5 cable. So you can run one wire to your equipment to power your security camera, access point, PoE lighting, anything that requires power and data you can do through PoE. Now there's a couple of types of PoE. There is passive, which means what voltage you send is what voltage you will receive, or there is the IEEE standard of 802.3 compliant. And that's important because if you have a compliant device, it requires a handshake to receive that power. And the reason they did that, when buildings were pre-wired with your little Ethernet jacks, people were plugging in devices, and if it wasn't the right voltage, it could cause problems for those devices they're powering. So what this does, it says, hey, we want to know that this is really 48 volts. Are you compliant? Yes, you are. We'll take the power. So they created the standard. They started with 802.3 AF. That's power up to about 15 watts at 48 volts. Well, as technology improved, cameras required more draw, or access points required more draw, they created the 802.3 AT standard. That is up to 30 watts. It can also be known as PoE Plus. PoE Plus is kind of just a generic term for 802.3 AT, but typically both of them mean it's 48 volt up to 30 watts of power. Well, technology improved, more cameras, higher draw. So I think it was in 2018, they released the standard 802.3 BT. Now along the way, there's they created PoE Plus, or like Cisco created their own proprietary PoE injector, UPoE. And so the PoE is typically 60 watts, but the 802.3 BT standard is up to 90 watts of power. So a lot of juice going to a high power access point, high power PTZ camera, something like that. So it's important when you are powering your device to see what standard it receives or accepts. Now all of these are backwards compatible. So an 802.3 BT injector will work with an 802.3 AT device, or with an 802.3 AF device. Having more wattage capability doesn't affect or hurt the device that you're powering, but it's not going to be proactive, I guess, where 802.3 AF won't power a 30 watt device, right? It's not receiving enough power. Now, typically the standards will start at 48 volt and can go up to 56 volt. The higher the wattage, typically the higher the voltage that it's going to require or need to power that device. There is also a 48 volt passive, but there is no standard for a 24 volt. So if you see 24 volt, it is always passive. Now, when you are powering high power devices like the 802.3 BT, sometimes you need 4 pair of power going to that device to take up enough power or enough juice, enough current to get to that access point or camera to give enough power. So we have 2-pair and 4-pair PoE because each Ethernet cable has 4 pairs of stranded cable. So there's 8 wires in total. Typically on your lower power devices, it's maybe 2 pair of data, 2 pair of power, and that's your 8 wires or 4 pair. However, with the 802.3 BT, it has 4 pair of power going on all the wires, and then you just have the data going on 2 pairs, so it will share on that. So like I said, this is a great little resource. Obviously, technology is changing. So let's see, let's go on. So let's talk about some of our PoE devices. So typically PoE is going to be an AC input. We're talking about our injectors and inserters, midspans. So AC input, obviously passive or 802.3 AF, AT, BT standards. We have high PoE, PoE plus, PoE plus plus, and then we have I already talked about 2-pair, 4-pair, 10-100 gigabit and 10 gigabit. So a lot of different options when talking about our PoE devices. The main advantage that PoE offers, like I said, is it is a single cable that can be run to supply both power or high-speed data and power to the devices. So powering telephones, printers, security cameras, other network-connected devices. Here's a couple examples. All of our AC power injectors we provide an AC power cord. So typically we ship with the US power cord. However, we do ship to Europe. We can provide EU power cord instead. They do, since EU is typically a 220 to 240 volt AC, all of our devices can accept that input. And then we have 24, 48 volt, 56 volt, up to 100 watts. With our midspan, so a midspan is an interesting device. It's something similar to basically having 4, 8, 16, or 24 individual power injectors. So we do have an AC or a DC input on our bigger midspan, and each you can see, like on our big rack mount, there are 24 ports on the top, 24 ports on the bottom. What that does is you can separate the different networks. Let's say that you have a big complex, you have different businesses within that building, but you need to provide internet to or some sort of networking switch to those different devices. You can separate them throughout the midspan. So you have data going in one line, and then you have PoE going out each port along the top. And you can separate those to say, let's say 4 ports is for the dentist's office, and another 4 or 8 ports is for some other business, right? Separate. You want to keep them separate. That's typically what our midspans are for, is to be able to provide power and data to the different networks. Now our PoE splitters, this takes PoE input, splits the data and the power on separate connectors. Typically what this is used for is to power the devices that are not capable of PoE. Maybe you have some older cameras that only accept 12 volt DC, or maybe a telephone. So it can split the power and the data, so you can power that device separately and then still have, on a lot of our devices, still have PoE pass through, or it just completely splits the power and data. So that's a lot of different options, from 24 volt, well, I guess even starting at 12 volt input up to 56 volt, and then being able to split power and data. You can get a USB output, female or male Ethernet jack. So a lot of different options with our PoE injectors. And this is just a few of the different options that we can provide. Next, we have our DC converters. So the difference between AC and DC, and we throw those names around assuming that everybody knows. AC is alternating current. That's going to be your normal wall jack, right? Your 2-prong or 3-prong outlet. DC is going to be low voltage. So typically 12 volt would be like a car battery, or a lot of the batteries that we use for our remote pro system or solar systems are going to be 12 volt DC. There's also 24 volt, 36 volt, 48 volt, up to 60 and 72 volts. So our DC converters are going to take a DC input from 9 to 72 volts and then convert to a 24 volt PoE, 48 volt PoE, 56 volt PoE. So DC input can be either PoE, but typically it's going to be like a wire terminal input with your data input and then give you a PoE output. Same options as the PoE injectors. Typically the main difference would be PoE is usually AC input, DC converter is DC input. So we even have some of our dual PoE out. So maybe you have one power source and but you need to power a couple devices, maybe at a longer cable run. And so you only need to run one cable out to this DC converter, and then you have two output at 56 volts. So a lot of different options with that. Or let's say you need regulated power, which means if your device is fickle or very specific, it can take 12 volt in and nothing else, right? 11 volts wouldn't be good for it. Then our DC converters have that regulated DC output. And then we offer up to 70 watts. So basically any input to whatever output you need. So when you're trying to select the right DC converter, we just need to know what your voltage input is and what the devices you're powering, or if you know already what voltage. But it also helps if we know what wattage, so we can make sure that we're providing the part with a high enough power, right? So whether it's just our standard 15 watts, 20 watts, or if you need 30, 50, 60 watts. Let's jump to our switches. So there are a couple different types of unmanaged versus managed switches. All of our switches are PoE. There's other, you can go to a lot of retailers and find just a simple PoE switch, or sorry, just a simple switch, using your home. All of our switches are PoE. So we have our 3-port switch, which is also could be considered a PoE extender. So pop quiz. Think about this before I answer. How long can you run an Ethernet cable? What's the max distance? If you said 100 meters or about 300 to 330 feet, you are correct. So with this PoE extender or 3-port switch, you can run 100 meters at 802.3 AT, plug into our PoE input, and now get 2 PoE outputs at 56 volt, 802.3 AT, and then either power 2 devices right there or run another 100 meters. You don't need an external power supply for this. It is indoor rated, so you would need to put it in some sort of outdoor enclosure if it was going to be outdoors. And then we have a lot of 5-port switch options. We can go through each part number one by one. I'll just do a quick synopsis. So the SW5G-NC, NC stands for non-compliant or passive. So what voltage you put in is the voltage you're going to get out on those 4 PoE ports. The SW5G24, and there's also an HP version, which stands for high power, is a 10 to 36 volt input and converts all 4 ports to give you 802.3 AT up to 70 watts. The HP will be up to 140 watts. The SW5G-D-BT is going to give you BT input, so you can take input on the PoE uplink and then give you 4 ports at 802.3 BT output. The Versa switch is basically, Versa stands for versatile. You can see here under the part numbers is the picture of the Versa. You get a 24 volt PoE output, 3 ports at 802.3 AT, and then a high PoE or 60 watt output. Our Versa BT switch will give you up to 90 watts on that 5th port. It does require a 48 volt input, but now you have, this is great for powering, let's say you have an access point that's 24 volts, and then you have 2, 3, 4 cameras. You can power all of them directly from this Versa switch. And then there's the Versa BT. Oh, I already said that, 90 watts. Hopefully you're all paying attention. If not, then you heard it a second time. Let's jump to our managed switches. Now the difference is we consider the unmanaged, we would call them maybe a dumb switch, right? There's no user interface. With these, they all have an online GUI, so you can go in and program the different switches. The two on the left are going to be a 48 volt input and gives you a 4 or 8 802.3 AT output. We also provide a gigabit, or is it I think take that back, I believe it's 2.5 gigabit on the SFP ports. So you can run fiber as well as have your camera systems, powered cameras, access points on one of those two. On the two on the right, a little bit more unique. The SW8G stands for gigabit, AT, 802.3 AT/24. Those ports can be configured to be 24 volt or 802.3 AT. They do require 48 volt input for both of these switches. The GAT/BT/24, you get two ports at 802.3 BT, so 90 watts per port, and then the others can be configured to 802.3 AT or 24 volt passive. We are soon releasing these two new switches that we're excited about. The 8-port switch, it'll take in 12 to 57 volt. So you don't have to, if you have like, let's say a 12 volt or 24 volt battery system, you would need some sort of power supply or DC converter to bump it up to the 48 or 56 volt to power our other managed switches. With this, you can do it from a 12 or 24 volt power supply. 4 ports at 802.3 BT or 56 volt, and then 4 ports at 802.3 AT or 24 volt. And they can be whatever configuration you'd require. So you can power several different cameras or access points from this single switch, this managed switch, along with the 2 SFP ports. Our 16-port switch will take AC or DC to power the device. You'll get 4 ports at 802.3 BT, and then 12 can be configured at your pleasure, 802.3 AT or 24 volt passive. So we're really excited about both of these switches. The 8-port is DIN rail mounted, and the 16-port is a rack mounted version. So these are going to be coming out, I would guess, about mid-June. So we'll start taking pre-orders on these 2 switches, but we're really excited for them to fill some holes in the market. Now, to power these devices, we offer our PS DIN 48 volt. This is basically taking a 48 volt, or sorry, an AC input and provides a DC output. So a 48 volt to power those managed switches, those high power devices from an AC power source. It's an auto ranging input, so it'll accept anything from 90 to 264 volt AC. And then you have an adjustable output at 47 to 57 volts, depending on what your device requires. And lastly, let's talk about our PoE accessories. We have a lot of different accessories that just are in the PoE family. We have surge protection, whether it's a 1 port in, out, or a 24 volt, like the one below is our rack mounted version. So you can power or surge protect up to 24 different devices. We have a PoE converter. So this would be great. Let's say you have a PoE switch, a standard, which is 48 volts, but you want to power from that switch a 24 volt radio or 24 volt device, right? It doesn't have to be a radio. This little PoE converter can be in line to be able to accept that 48, down convert to 24 volt at gigabit output. So it's just a nice clean device. All you need is add a little patch cable to convert down to 24 volts. Our PoE Power Tap BT, what this does is it'll take in the Ethernet 802.3 BT into the inline and then give you the wire terminal, the 90 watts of power on a positive negative wire terminal. So if you're powering something that does require, that can't take PoE but needs to be hardwired, this is a great device for that, another inline accessory. The PoE INJ-1000, there are actually 3 different models of this. We have a WT, a WTX, and the main difference is just it's a wire terminal, but it's how the positive and negatives are on a specific set of pairs. And so some devices are that specific where they require positive and negatives on certain pairs. That's what that's for. The WTS we released, I guess it was mid last year, to power the Starlink radios. They had a unique pairing, and so we've sold these all over, shipped them all over to power the different Starlink devices out there. The TP-DIN PoE relay allows you to, from PoE, turn on, turn off different devices. So it's a great accessory to add at maybe a remote location. You can access the GUI and be able to, like I said, turn on, turn off, set up your PoE, the relay device. Lastly, our PoE extender. So if you remember, I mentioned that you can run 100 meters of Ethernet cable, Cat5 cable. Well, you can plug this in. It is 802.3 AT compliant. This is outdoor rated IP66, so you don't have to have an external or an enclosure or anything like that. This is outdoor rated. Plug in your Cat5 cable, run another 100 meters, and you can daisy chain several of these together to give yourselves a longer cable run if it's just not possible to have the device mounted close to a power source. So you can run these, put 3-4 of them together, give yourself 400 or 500 meters of cable run without requiring an external power supply. So there are a lot of devices that we offer through Tycon Power. We don't expect everybody to have our part numbers memorized. We do try to make our parts intuitive. So by reading the part number, you can typically see what the input, what the output is on those devices. But feel free to reach out. We're happy to answer any questions. Like I said, we just need to know what your input device is, whether it's AC or DC, what voltage input, and then what is required for the output. And then our team can help put together the right part number for you. So that's all I have, Julie. Obviously, we could spend all day talking about the different part numbers, but I think we'd bore everybody to death. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Seth. And no, you didn't bore us at all. That was a wonderful presentation. And I know even I liked it, okay?
I'm glad to hear it.
No problem. I liked it very much. And yes, I do have some questions from our audience members. Let's get started with the first one. Can your PoE devices support high-powered applications like PTZ cameras or Wi-Fi access points?
Yeah, absolutely. Most PTZ cameras that I've seen, because we do system designs all the time, so we're always looking at other manufacturer data sheets. And to be honest, that's where we get a lot of our inspiration, is having to power those different devices. Most PTZ cameras are going to take 50 to 60 watts, which would be a PoE++ or a high PoE. Or I have seen on the rare occasion a 90-watt PTZ camera. We have the devices to power each of those. So we had the 802.3 BT standard is rated up to 90 watts. We have the PoE injectors to power it, or the switches, right? So not just a single injector, but if you needed to power multiples, we can do it from our switches. So absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Seth. Next question here for you. Are your PoE devices suitable for outdoor or harsh environments and harsh weather?
They are, yes and no. They are industrial temperature range, so they're going to handle very harsh weather, right? We have these all over the world. We have them in the extreme cold, extreme heat. However, they're in a protected enclosure, right? So they will handle those harsh conditions, but they're not weatherproof. So they do need to be in some sort of enclosure. Typically, when you're dealing with heat areas, like we offer many different aluminum, steel, polycarbonate enclosures, and all of our steel and aluminum enclosures come with a thermostatically controlled fan to help keep the temperature down to prevent equipment from overheating. So as long as it's in some sort of protected environment, then you're going to be just fine. Typically, the range that these can still operate, each device is a little bit different, but they are made of hardened plastic or even metal casings. and they'll handle about -30 degrees Fahrenheit to about 155, 160 degrees Fahrenheit. There are some that are a little bit higher, a little bit lower, but they're typically within that range. You're going to be just fine. But we have them in the extreme colds, and we have our devices in the hottest deserts. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Seth. Couple more questions still here. Next one. Can you tell us what kind of warranty and support you offer for your PoE devices?
Absolutely. All of our PoE devices come with a 3-year warranty. So you can access the warranty one of two ways. You can email sales@tyconsystems.com with all of the information, or you can fill out an RMA form on our website. If you go to our website, you can reach our chat. So you can reach out for support during business hours on the chat. Call us, reach out. We have a live people in the office. We're located in Utah, so our support team is here in Utah. You can talk to somebody on the phone. You can send us an email at support@tyconsystems.com. So we will support all of our products, whether you purchase directly through us or through distribution like Microcom. We're going to support you, and all of our devices come with a 3-year warranty.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Seth. Next question here. How do your PoE devices handle power fluctuations in your network?
So all of our devices, all of our PoE products have built-in surge protection. So if you do get some sort of power surge, your equipment is going to be protected with that built-in surge protection. That's an important feature that we add in designing our products, because we don't want to just supply power, we want to supply protection. So that is one way. You can have those little spikes, you can have those inrushes of current, and your device will be protected because of our the design of our injectors and DC converters.
Thank you for that, Seth. Couple more questions left here still. Next one. What advances or improvements can you tell us that we may be able to expect in the future from your PoE devices?
We're always maintaining a high level of quality. That's our goal. Is we want to extensively test and improve on all of our equipment. That's why we're constantly attending trade shows. We talk to customers, we get feedback, we take any kind of failure on product very seriously. We want to make sure that we are backing up our product. We don't want to just put something out there and say, yeah, hope it works. Our goal is to, because obviously we have a reputation we want to protect. We feel like we're leading the industry with our, not just our quality and technology, but with our support. And we want to make sure that everybody has a good experience when you're using Tycon product. So when we get feedback from customers of, hey, this isn't working, we extensively test, we troubleshoot. Why did it fail? What voltage was put in? And then we go to our factory. We work with our quality assurance department to make sure that our standards maintain the level that the market deserves. So we have engineers on staff always looking at new technology, coming up with ideas of what we can do to launch and release. We're always looking for holes in the market. What can we do to power different devices that maybe don't exist or are not accessible? Obviously, with a recent example of that is that power injector that we designed just exclusively for the Starlink radios. People were coming to us and asked, if we had anything, and we didn't at the time. We didn't realize that Starlink was powering their positive and negatives on different cables or get different wires within that Ethernet cable than every other standard. So we designed this product specifically for that, and that's a regular occurrence for Tycon engineers. We're always looking what we can do to improve our products.
Thank you, Seth. That sounded great. Last question here for you. Thank you so much for letting us know you guys are in Utah. That's great. But can you tell us where your products are manufactured?
You bet. So the majority of our products are manufactured in Taiwan. We do have a factory in China as well, that we've contracted with to build our PoE switches. So some of our managed switches are coming from China, but the majority of our products are PoE, DC converters, and most of our switches are coming out of Taiwan.
Seth, thank you so much for answering those questions for us today. And thank you to everyone for attending our webinar. And if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to contact your sales rep or email us at sales@microcomtech.com. And if you wish to view any of the products mentioned and shown here today, please remember this webinar has been recorded and will be uploaded to our Microcom YouTube channel so we can all view it again. Seth, thank you for your time today. We greatly appreciate it. I hope everyone enjoyed the webinar. Everyone, have a fantastic rest of your day.